Hello, everyone. We are back on Newbie Bite number 24, which is all about tuples or tuples, depending how you would like to say it. I usually just go back and forth. I have no rhyme or reason. It just happens naturally. That being said, let's go ahead and get started here. To understand what tuples are, you need to understand the idea of mutability. In Python, mutable objects can be edited after they've been created. Immutable objects cannot be edited after they've been created. Now, this has to do with how it's stored in memory in Python, which is beyond the scope of these newbie byte exercises. But basically, what mutability means is that you can change your object programmatically. You can do something within the code to edit what you're doing without having to make a brand new copy of it. Where if you have an immutable object, you cannot edit it. You have to literally go in and manually change the code. A couple examples of immutable versus mutable objects are listed here for you. So things like lists, dictionaries, and sets, you can add them with, dot update or dot append, or you can remove items from them as well. Where if you have strings, integers, floats, and tuples, you cannot change those using Python. Now, you might be thinking, well, why would I want to choose something that I can't edit? Well, immutable objects are much faster to access, whereas mutable objects are much easier to change. I have a IPython session set up here, and if you've never heard of IPython before, don't necessarily worry about it. Instead, just focus in on what these functions are actually doing. I have a function called square list that is just a list of the numbers 1 through 10. I'm using a for loop to iterate over each number in there, and I'm just multiplying it by itself. I'm not actually doing anything with this multiplication. I'm not saving it in an object. I'm not returning it from the function. I'm just having Python do these calculations. In the second function called square tuple, I'm doing the same thing, but instead of having a list of numbers, I'm using a tuple. So you can tell the difference between a tuple and a list by the surrounding braces. A tuple uses parentheses, whereas the list uses these square brackets. Other than that, these functions are identical. The reason that I want to use IPython is because it has this nice feature called time it. So I can say time it, and then I can type in the name of my function. So let's go ahead and start with the list. I'm going to run it. And what time it does is it repeats this function 1,000,000 times for 7 different runs. And you can see there that it takes approximately 291 nanoseconds per loop. Let's try the same thing, but with the tuple version. You can see here it only took 264 nanoseconds. If you have some type of data that you know for sure is never going to change, you can use a tuple and it will speed up your processing. Let's go take a look at the program. Here we are back in our movies list, and let's go ahead and change this into a tuple. So I'm going to change the surrounding square brackets to parentheses. Let's run the code right now and let's see what happens. It says tuple object has no attribute remove. And that's because when it was a list, we were able to remove the Batman and we were able to append Batman to the end. But now that we've created a tuple instead, these lines will not work. So let's go ahead and delete these lines. Let's come change the name of the movie manually. And now, instead of looping over the list of movies, we're going to loop over a tuple of movies. And you can see that our program works exactly the same. Instead of manually changing the square brackets to parentheses, we can actually come through here. We can use the functionality of the list. And now we can say, okay, let's make this static movies. And we're going to do that by using the tuple function on the list of movies. And the only other thing that we need to change here is this is now going to be static movies. There we have it. Hopefully this was helpful. Good luck on today's bite.